Hey there, and welcome to this week's episode of the Magnetic Marketing Podcast. Today we're covering the 10 blueprints for effective coaching programs, part 1 of 2. There's a lot that's going in here. You're going to be learning, number 1, if you don't have a coaching program, how do you add this into your business? But number 2, if you already have a coaching program, you're going to be learning how you can take it, what you're doing now, and make it even better, plus how you can add an additional level or method in order to make your coaching program premium. Let's get started.
I don't think there's anybody that has had a bigger impact in the field of direct response than Dan Kennedy.
The legend of Dan Kennedy should be ignored at your own peril.
They're not really lessons, they're kind of laws that you live by.
Dan opened my eyes to what small business marketing looks like.
Dan teaches strategic direct response that is timeless.
His ripple effect touches people who don't even know his name.
The world as we know it was changed because Dan Kennedy became obsessed with marketing.
Welcome to the Magnetic Marketing Podcast with your host, Dan Kennedy.
Good morning, everybody. Everybody feeling good? What we're going to do talking about today is sort of what's called Rich Coach Day, and it's the 10 blueprints of the coaching business, or it's really the 10 most common blueprints of the coaching business. And the one thing I'll tell you is, and I made this comment this morning for all of you that were in the Information Marketing Association private session we had this morning, that just about, not every, but just about every information marketer that I work with eventually either evolves into a coaching model or in many cases begins with a coaching model. So it is really one of the 2 or 3 most important sort of blueprints in the whole coaching of the whole information marketing world is this blueprint of coaching. And then what happens after that is then just to say coaching is a generic term, and now there's different blueprints within that or different ways to do it. So the purpose of you being here today is sort of couple-fold. Number 1 is if you're already providing coaching in your information marketing business is to look at how can I take the thing I'm doing now and make it even better. The other thing is if I'm not providing coaching is to how do I add this onto my business, or maybe do I lead in the information marketing business with my business if you're new to this business. And or the third thing is if I'm providing coaching is how can I add on an additional coaching level to the business. What's going to happen is Dan is going to be coming up here in just a minute or two, and he's going to be giving you have with you about an hour and 15 minutes this morning to giving you a big overview of the 10 models. So the first thing is going through each of the 10 different models and sort of explaining them to you. And then what I did was I tapped into the people that are in my info mastermind groups and also 1 or 2 people in Dan's platinum group. And I'm going to have them coming up here today and walking through and showing you how they're using one of the models in their business. Many of them are using multiple models, but they're going to come up and they've been sort of hand-selected to show you how they're using one of the models in their business. Now, they're here. They're very gracious to be here, and we thank them for doing this and also sort of exposing their business models to you guys. So we got to really thank them for that. Let's first start off with the sort of the whole overview of the 10 blueprints of the coaching business. So I bring you Mr. Dan Kennedy.
An entire industry of coaching has actually developed what we now call coaching. And before I hit the models very quickly, I want to talk a little bit about really what it is. So this entire industry within the information marketing industry, if you can call it an industry, has it's sort of like calling the Somalia pirates an industry. I mean, I guess technically they are, but they do have a trade association now, and they have a convention once a year, and guest speakers, and I understand Kern's speaking for them. Very shortly, indistinguishable from Johnny Depp, right? So this whole industry within the industry has developed, evolutionary mostly, for a variety of reasons. And so, as Bill said, we apply this coaching label to a big, broad range of things, including things that in some respects really aren't coaching, but we've now made them coaching. And I think it's sort of useful as a big frame to think about what, it really is. So in some cases, it's just a different means of really teaching and delivering training content, and it is nothing more or less than that. In many cases, it's really a way to create a motivational environment that encourages people to implement, intimidates people into implementing, shames people into implementing, and gives them recognition for implementing. So it's very much about a way to create an environment in which what people actually do with what you sell to them is seen by others, is exposed, and they are motivated for both positive and negative reasons to actually do something. In some cases, and this is one of its origins, it's really a peer advisory sort of thing. And many of the traditional mastermind and coaching group businesses, CEO clubs, Young Presidents Organization, which is now called something else, I forget what. Some of you are members, so you would know, but YPO and YEO, and my friend Joe Mancuso's CEO clubs. These are all really peer advisory groups. It's a different way of delivering consulting. In many cases, it's like tech support. It's a way of providing support for products and services. In many cases, it's really all about creating a fraternity, which is a retention issue. So people sort of morph from staying around because of teaching, training, content to staying around because of the convenient fraternal opportunity they have when they get together in person and in online forums and so forth with the other people that are in their coaching groups. In some cases, it's a way of facilitating joint ventures and strategic alliances and business deals. And in many cases, it's some hybrid of all of those things. As Bill said, most of the examples you'll see are really hybrid examples more than they are one particular model. In some cases, it is a business in and of itself. So there are companies that are pure coaching companies. That's all they are. There are companies that are pure mastermind group companies. That's all they are. There are people in our world who move cold prospects. The first transaction is really joining a coaching program that exists. More commonly, they're extensions of product. And so the model is more like somebody buys product and then they need and want help implementing that product, and that leads to coaching. Most info marketers have this towards the top of their business pyramid, not towards the bottom, and so there's lower levels of product, of seminars, of maybe short-term programs, and then the price moves up the pyramid. And in many cases, this is like where the profit in the business is, which is one of the reasons that makes it so important. So we'll look at the models. The order therein is not even necessarily significant, but this is probably the most common. And at the small group mastermind meeting, people are typically at the meeting in a boardroom table environment. The meeting is like all about participation, not really about training. They grew out of sources. The Napoleon Hill mastermind story, of course, is the one that is used most commonly to set up the sale of these things. And it is useful for that. In reality, it's sort of interesting to know that Napoleon Hill sort of romanced that rock a little, in that those guys weren't getting together so much for what we call masterminding as they were getting together like Somalia pirates to coordinate their effort to dominate an industry and bar competition, hence ultimately antitrust laws. So their mastermind concept was so successful it led to a whole level of law and regulation, which, by the way, many things do that. They're so successful that somebody figures out we better regulate all this. And there were other groups. Hill talks mostly about them, Edison, Firestone, Ford. But there was a group called the Chicago Six about the same time, business owners that got together to cross-purpose and control industries. So the practical aspects of these things drove them more than the metaphysical aspects of these things in their early formation. In our world, both are often in play. The industry-specific ones, so a mastermind group for auto repair shop owners, a mastermind group for dentists, a mastermind group for lawyers, a mastermind group for grossly overeducated, anal retentive MBAs trying to become entrepreneurs, and they all get in a room. Gee, wouldn't that be fun? They're driven by the Napoleon Hill combined mind concept. They're driven by practical aspects, if not deal making, information sharing really to the laboratory level. And when you sell these sorts of things, you have to think about all of these benefits that are delivered to people. In my own case, in the 10 years in my platinum group, I mean, you've got 10 people who can go do testing instead of one person doing testing. And because their businesses are so similar in nature and size, even though in different niches, what one tests, the results are pretty useful for everybody in the group. And that alone is a big reason to be in there. Bill's Info Mastermind groups today, same sort of arrangement, right? You have everybody in the group, even though they're in vastly different niches. The mechanics of their business are so similar that there's no reason for 10 people to all go test what happens if we use foil envelopes instead of paper envelopes. One person can go run that test and the results are valid for all 10, which means you can test 10 times as much stuff at 10 times the speed, at 1/10 the cost, and all that's pretty important. So these mastermind groups are, I think, what you see more commonly than anything else. You see them as top of the pyramid businesses. You see them relatively priced high. You can do the math yourself, but at $8, $10, $12, $15, $20, $25,000 per person, you don't need but a few of these groups to have a very, very nice income. And they have their virtues exceed their drawbacks. Their virtues, first of all, they can be fed from a very small herd. People can create at least one of these from a relatively small number of buyers and customers. You don't need thousands and thousands and thousands of people to get 12 to pony up and step up and join this kind of a group. You may only need a few hundred. They can be very specialized, or they can be wide open mixed dog. So I've run both. So my gold VIP groups were mixed dog, meaning it didn't matter what business you were in. It was irrelevant. And although we did in one of those groups, as Harry pointed out this morning, we did have 3 attorneys in the same group, which for a variety of reasons was remarkable. A, that I let it happen. B, that there were 3 attorneys who actually wanted to join a group. And at one point there were 4, but one of them never showed up. So, that's, we call that's like you can add a seat and he's not going to show up, so you can just take the money and you still have a group of 12, right? Because he's never going to be there. But at lunch they all had to sit together because nobody wants to sit with the attorneys, so they all got to go off by themselves and have their own little mastermind group. But so these were mixed dog. Didn't matter what business you were in, and the commonality is sort of the overriding topic matter, right? So everybody's getting together to find out, in my case, how to help each other market their business better. Or they can be very, very specialized. So they can be niche specialized just for dentists, or they could just be for cosmetic dentists. They could just be for dentists with multi-office practices. You could have a group just for dentists doing $1 million a year or more, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They can even be local. Most of our independent business advisors, for example, have at least one. Some have more than one mastermind groups, and they're able to fill them, again, from very small numbers at relatively high prices. One of the great virtues is the attrition tends to be low year to year because the personal relationship is great and the fraternity aspect is great. So the attrition rate tends to be low. People are pretty reluctant to leave. People are very eager for this experience. When you do some of the other kind of formats, you will find that you ultimately lose people because they can't get that kind of tight access. Supply and demand age your sale dramatically because if you've only got 12 chairs or you've only got 15 chairs and everybody knows you've only got 15 chairs and you really only have 15 chairs and there's 100 people who might want a chair, that makes your sales effort often quite easy. It's like, there's 15 chairs. That's all there is. First qualified person with an application in one hand and a check in the other gets one of the chairs, and look around. There's 100 of them that kind of want it. Right? So that simplifies the sales job dramatically. These kind of groups have been sold without having to have people in the room, with teleseminars, with application process, et cetera, largely because of the supply and demand. Another virtue is, by and large, these type of groups deliver the highest value for the participants because the coach actually is coaching. He actually is working on an intimate level. Everybody's getting a turn every single time to work on their businesses. It's not like hot seats or take a big group, divide it up into small groups. It's not that. So the value tends to be very high. The income for you, the operator, viewed in a per day or a per hour or pretty much any frame tends to be very, very high. And quite frankly, the amount of work you have to do other than showing up tends to be pretty low. If you formed a good group and it is operating as a mastermind group, they're bringing everything to the table. You don't have to bring much to the table. And they need the time of the 1 day or the 2 days or the 3 days. So another virtue for the operator is you kind of show up and you make the trains run on time and make sure nobody kills anybody and there's no blood on the floor afterwards and everybody gets a turn and occasionally you say something smart and that's like pretty much the requirement. The drawbacks, over time, because it is a small, intimate group, there's no place for anybody to hide, you or them. And so familiarity breeds all sorts of bad things. It rarely breeds good things. You can make this a lot worse, by the way, as an aside, by turning your mastermind group into a buddy group. A little piece of advice I have for you is don't go to the bar with them, don't hang out with them, don't go play softball with them, don't go gamble with them. There's got to be some lines. But that's a drawback. Second drawback is this kind of group probably requires the highest level of skill on your part. You don't have to do a lot of prep work, but because you don't do prep work, you actually have to know your stuff and you have to be able to operate spontaneously without a net. And that probably requires the highest level of skill. And so that's a drawback. And because they're small, they're vulnerable to quick collapse many different ways. Mutiny, 3 or 4 people get together and decide they can do it without you. One person decides he can take 4 with him and charge them half as much as you do. One poisonous person can turn the whole group. If you're niche specific, some Temporary, really huge adversity in your industry can wipe it out, and because it's small, you really don't have any protection. And of course, if you got 12 and you lose 3, at the next meeting, everybody notices. It's not like they don't notice, you know. So those are the drawbacks. The next format, oh, by the way, if you want the Napoleon Hill stuff, the main page is in Laws of Success on page 55. But the stuff you want to use is a section of about 15, 20 pages in laws, not in Think and Grow Rich. There's stuff in Think and Grow Rich, too, you might want to use, but the heavy stuff is in the Laws of Success books. There's several different editions, so the page number might not be right depending on which one you get, but you'll find the section on Mastermind. And early on, by the way, and many people have copied this, when I sold my Mastermind groups at the very beginning, the brochure was like an order form and a Xerox copy of the Napoleon Hill chapter from Laws of Success. So Hill, I don't know if you know this about Napoleon Hill, but he was an advertising copywriter before he was a personal development guy, and during the time he was a personal development guy. Wrote all the original ad copy for LaSalle Extension courses, one of the first distance colleges, if you will. Accredited schools in the country. So he's a very good ad copywriter. And so all the books are really disguised sales letters. They're just selling Hill and concepts rather than products. And so his copy selling the virtues of being in a mastermind is pretty good copy. And to use it as fodder, to tweak into a sales letter, or to reprint it and use it. Second thing you'll see today, second format, now are the large groups. Right? And they're really a perversion of mastermind groups. That doesn't mean they're not valuable, understand, but they're a perversion because technically a mastermind group needs to be 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 people coming together, forming one mind, and that really doesn't happen with 200 people. Other things happen. Their origins, they kind of grew out of the seminar business more than anything else. As seminar operators realized, A, there was a need, a demand, a desire for what's next. Right? And if you put on seminars and you don't offer a what next, and you're doing it well, people ask you, well, now what? Right? When this thing's over, what's next? So there was a demand for it. And from a business standpoint, seminar providers figured out, we had this event. We went to all this trouble to have this event. Everybody's happy. And now they're going to leave, and we're going to have to start all over again 6 months from now to try and get them to give us money again. Maybe we should somehow institutionalize this process. They wanted renewable income, repeatable income, not transactional income. And so these things grew out of the seminar and workshop business for a very, very practical economic reason. To the best that I know, they really began on the human potential, self-improvement side, not really on the business side. They were very common components of an industry, still exists, but not in the way it did, in the late 78, 79, 80, and probably through mid-80s, particularly in chiropractic, but also in dental. There was a thriving industry. If you can call info marketing an industry, you can call this an industry. There was a thriving industry called practice management. Today, we would probably call these things coaching programs. A typical practice management program, and I was involved with 2 companies and I spoke a lot for another one, would sell the doctor a 2-year, 3-year, maybe 4-year commitment program, often on percentage above base, at least initially, which means, doc, you're doing $50,000 a month, the inflation rate's 11%, so we're going to forecast your base at $50,000 a month plus 11% for the first year. Oh, and in the last 3 years, your average year-to-year growth on your own is 9. So 9 plus 11 is 20. So your base is $50,000 a month for the first year, $60,000 a month for the second year, $72,000 a month for the third year of our contract, and we're going to get 30% of everything that happens above that base. That's percentage above base. And then that was generally used to flip into a prepay, because you really didn't want percentage above base clients, because now you had to worry about them actually performing. But that argument was now, okay, the average results we get with docs is we triple their practice, so we use your base, we calculate what it looks like when we triple your practice, you're going to wind up paying us $286,412, and you can discount that out right now for $33,000, and here's a finance agreement so you can pay it in 12 months. So that's what practice management looked like. And practice management really bundled large group, for the most part, workshop kind of coaching meetings, 2 times a year, 3 times a year, 4 times a year. We did, in the biggest company, where we had, at peak, we had 4,000 doctors at an average of $30,000 a year. We did West Coast, East Coast. So there were 4 East Coast meetings, 4 West Coast meetings during the year. Plus they got phone coaching, group and one-on-one. Plus they got systems and product and software. And so kind of everything we might now have in 2 or 3 different things was all bundled together in this format. And it was very, very common in those professions, to the point that there was almost as much clutter as you see in those professions now of information marketing. I mean, at the peak time that I was involved, there were at least 50 practice management companies in chiropractic alone. And it's not that big of a niche. And some got very big and some didn't get very big. And, but this kind of came from there too. It evolves mostly in most information marketing businesses backwards. It's not like anybody really sets out to build one of these large group things. It happens often after they have a small group. And so they have sort of the bottom of their pyramid where there's product being sold and low-price teleseminars and events. And then they have the very top of a pyramid where 12 people are paying them each $25,000 a year and getting together around a round table. And there's more people that want to be in there than they can accommodate, and there's people who really aren't ready to be in there yet, and there's this big hole in the middle of the pyramid. So the large group thing kind of gets created as a result of that. Virtues and drawbacks. Well, unlimited or nearly unlimited size from an operator standpoint is a big advantage. The problem with having 15 seats at the table is you really start to regret it when you have number 16 and number 17 and number 23 and number 36 who would like to give you money and you can't take it. That bothers a lot of people. So the nearly unlimited size is a big advantage. With it is it's very easy with the big group to have open enrollment, meaning you're ready to join? Join. Boom, we can drop you in at any time, right? In the small ones, it's usually year to year. So a terrific candidate surfaces and wants to pay money, but it's a group of 15 and all 15 of them are still there. You can't take that guy until you're forming another group or the start of next year when somebody drops out for one reason or another, or you fire somebody and you have a seat to put them in. A group that can have 100 in it or 200 in it or 75 in it, and they're at round tables rather than at a boardroom table, well, we can drop them in pretty much any time. So that is a big advantage. Generally speaking, you can offer this kind of program at a much more modest fee, affordable to more people, and still very profitable to you. Big benefit for the participants is they have more exposure to more people. And depending on are they getting networking benefit? Are they forming alliances? Depending on what they're getting out of a group, having 100 to draw from is a lot better than having 10 to draw from. So that's a big benefit to them, and they also then have more diversified experiences that they bring to the table. The drawbacks are you have more retention problems because there's the great personal connection between coach and client is not there. The personal connection between everybody in the group is not there. It's not, in many cases, what some of them feel like they need and want. And so you wind up starting to have to add parts on to a program in order to control your retention issues. It does require, because of that, a greater quantity of candidates, a bigger pool of candidates to draw from to be able to keep a group like that full. It requires more prep work on your part as the facilitator, because for at least part of the time of these meetings, you're usually running a workshop. We've called it coaching, but only a part of the time is really going to be coaching, and only a part of the time is going to be mastermind, and part of the time you got to teach. You got to run a workshop. One of two reasons. Either the group tends now not to be so advanced, so they don't bring as much to the table, and you will have spectators. In a mastermind group of 12 around the table, you don't have any spectators. They leave pretty quick because they're really not allowed to spectate, and if that's what they wanted to do, they're uncomfortable and they go. But in a big group, you will have spectators. They really don't want to participate. They want to watch, and you can accommodate them in a big group, but it means you got to do more work in advance of the session. Last, there's less benefit for the operator often beyond monetary benefit. So in the small groups, if you're a niche guy, so you're running a mastermind group for auto repair shop owners, and you got 15 really smart pencils in the box in that group from all across the country who are running auto repair shop owners, even if you're not in that business anymore, you're at least getting a lot of benefit out of doing the meetings with them that you can turn around now and integrate into your newsletters and your teleseminars and your speeches and what you do for the bottom of your pyramid. If you're with peers, in my case, info marketers and platinum, I mean, the meeting, arguably, not that this would ever happen in a bazillion years, but arguably I could have done the meetings for free because of the non-financial benefit of being in the room with 18 really smart pencils. So Ted Thomas is here somewhere. Ted's been in platinum. Rory was in platinum for several years. Bill was in platinum for most of the years we had platinum. Ron LeGrand, if he's not here now, he was here. Ron was in platinum. So, you know, it really is a peer advisory group. Everybody had to be making at least $1 million in the information marketing business to be in the room. So the non-monetary benefit is enormous. In a big group, the non-monetary business benefits to the operator are not so great. Third format, what we call Coaching Plus. And Coaching Plus is really all about added value. So if it's Coaching Plus, typically in its presentation to the marketplace, in the way it's sold, the emphasis is still on the coaching. So the emphasis is on, you're in a mastermind group and you should be in a mastermind group, and here's the 212 reasons you should be in a mastermind group. You're in a big coaching group, and here's what happens in that coaching group, and here's the 212 reasons you should be in that coaching group. Plus, you get these other benefits. You'll also see flips of it where all the emphasis is on the other benefits, and oh, by the way, you also get to be in a mastermind group, or you also get to be in a coaching group. Typical added value, licensed use of proprietary stuff, very common. So you get to use this software program, you get to use this collection of marketing materials, you get to use these ads, you get to use this collection of ads for which we have gone and got a celebrity to appear in. You get to use this stuff because you're in this group. And incidentally, the minute you're not in this group, you have to stop using all that stuff. Exclusive access to or pricing from a group of vendors. That's a very typical added value. So here, because the nature of your business is you need these 18 things, and we've gone and rounded up 18 providers who understand our system, and they're behind this wall, and you get to do business with them because you're in this group, and or you get preferred pricing. Done for them stuff. Okay, so now that's a step further. We've rounded up all these vendors, and we've got prefab, everything's done, and you plug and play. There's a plus minus to that you want to keep in mind, because there's a conflict. If there's too much done for them, why do they need coached? Now, they do, but in their head, you understand what happens. If my advertising is done for me, if my marketing is done for me, if my staff training is done for me, if my pricing is done for me, if my follow-up sequences are done for me, why on earth do I need to sit in a room 4 times a year for 2 days to be coached? Let me just go make the bank deposit and leave me alone, right? But you want them in coaching. So there's a little conflict there that you have to weigh and juggle. Exclusive opportunities, some things that everybody does together that they either could not do alone or would not do alone, that you orchestrate for them. So a very common example in niche industries is the group is put together and they all get a chapter in an anthology book. And now they each have a book they can use. Nobody had to write a book from start to finish. Nobody had to bear out of their own pocket all of the expenses of hiring a ghostwriter and getting the thing, because everybody pools. In my platinum group, on 2 different occasions in 10 years, we all stayed an extra day, brought a recording guy in, and created a product. Some of you probably own one or both sets of the Platinum Eavesdrop tapes. So everybody participated in the creation of the product. Everybody got the rights to use the product. Everybody got a set of masters. Everybody split the cost of the recording and the editing, which now divided by 18 people is like nothing. And everybody's got a great product with a great story. And in this case, I wrote a sales letter for it, so they all got a sales letter. So that's an exclusive benefit. Proprietary products for resale. So in Ron Ipak's case, in the auto industry, he's got a thing called Car Club. It's basically a coupon book that they all have access to and can use. Mike Cravette, who's here, he's really now the flip of Coaching Plus. But everybody who's using his safety technology company websites in order to sell all of the products that those websites sell, they also get coaching on internet marketing and how to sell those products. The origins are almost entirely here. We pretty much invented Coaching Plus. Now the pieces, the logical evolution, of course, is here's this cafeteria of all this stuff. This is a way to bundle it, right? It's response to people's demand to have things done for them. And it is a way to force implementation and to solve some retention issues with pain of disconnect because you get this stuff unplugged. The way to think about that, by the way, is nobody likes having things taken away from them, even if it is just inconvenient to replace them. So in real estate, my client there, Craig Proctor, for many years had the largest Coaching Plus business in the industry. And the coaching members had 8, 10, 12 different websites, all preloaded and maintained with all the Craig Proctor marketing products. So they're using all these domain names and all these websites, and he's keeping them up to date, and he's adding new content. They had recorded messages for all these things. They had the recorded message numbers and the websites on all their business cards and all their brochures and all this literature. So the day you decide not to participate in coaching anymore, there's a lot of plugs to pull. And so the utility business, if you think about it, who gets paid first at home? The power company. They generally get paid first. Nobody likes sitting in the dark and having the food spoil in the refrigerator. But you've seen these industries start to bundle. Why? Retention. Okay? So who can we do without? Power, phone, cable TV. We can do without cable TV. First thing we can do without. Then, if we have to do without something, we can do without a phone. We're not going to do without power, but what if we bundle all those things together? So now, if you got your internet hooked up, and you got your cable TV hooked up, and you got your phone service all hooked up to Time Warner at one monthly price, you got to pay the bill or your phone's turned off. Well, you might be okay doing without HBO this month, but you want your phone to work, especially if you're like at a oxygen, thing, and you need to breathe and you need to power. So their bundling is a means of having more plugs to pull. And that's a lot what Coaching Plus is about, is giving yourself a lot of plugs to pull that are unpleasant, inconvenient at minimum, and in some cases actually harmful because they're productive and useful and profitable for the people that are using them. And you don't just have one plug to pull, you've got like 30 plugs to pull. I always had, when I figured this out in my mind, there's an old TV show called Branded with Chuck Connors in it, who is better known for having been in The Rifleman. See, you got to be like, say, really old farts. He's a disgraced Foreign Legion or military guy or something, and at the start of the episode, they are ripping all of the epaulets and badges and everything off of his jacket, right? And so you see this ripped off, and this ripped off, and this ripped off, and this thing torn off, and this thing torn off, leaving him in this tattered coat with no authority anymore. And I always had that in my head when I started to think about pain of disconnect, because imagine being able to call your client, your coaching member, into the room and rip these things off of his coat and send him out kind of dazed and battered and tattered and going home to all these things being disconnected. And so a lot of what Coaching Plus is about is bundling products and services that, if not essential, are at least helpful and convenient, that then give you a lot of plugs to pull should they want to leave you.
Thank you for listening to the Magnetic Marketing Podcast with Dan Kennedy. If you love hearing in on these lost Dan Kennedy talks and speeches and calls, then please let someone else know about this podcast. That's how you can help it to grow. And the more it grows, the more free Dan Kennedy we can bring to you. Also, Dan would love to give you the most incredible free gift ever, designed to help you make maximum money in minimum time. Now, this free gift comes with almost $20,000 in pure money-making information for free, just for saying maybe. You can get this gift from Dan right now at nobsletter.com. Not only will you get the $20,000 gift, you're also going to get a subscription to 2 marketing newsletters that will be hand-delivered by the mailman to your mailbox each and every month. One from Dan Kennedy and one from me, Russell Brunson. To get this gift and your subscription, go to nobsletter.com right now.